Hello, everyone. Welcome to the LiquidText Masterclass for today. We're going to pause for just a moment and wait for some more folks to log in as we get started here. So we'll give it about a minute and then we'll be back with you. Okay, well, hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Ducker. I'm the co-founder of LiquidText, and my job here today is two-part. I'm going to be introducing our founder and CEO, Craig Tashman, who'll be conducting first about a 30-minute demonstration of LiquidText, getting into features in depth, followed by a 30-minute Q&A session where I'll be the moderator. So please, as the presentation goes on, feel free to queue up Q&As using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And for those that can be answered quickly by text, I will be responding. For those that need to be addressed by Craig in the larger group, we will moderate those later. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Craig Tashman, who will be conducting today's demo and Q&A. Craig?
Thank you so much, Stephen. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. As Stephen said, I'm Craig Tashman, founder and CEO of LiquidText, coming to you today from just north of New York City as the leaves are just finishing changing color. And we really appreciate you coming. I'm looking forward today to showing you a few things. So as Stephen said, we're going to do a demonstration and a basic use case. We're going to start, though, with a really brief, like 1 or 2 minute background on what is LiquidText and where did it come from. Go into the demo, talk a little bit about some best practices, and then, as Stephen said, we'll go on to the Q&A. So to kick things off, what exactly is LiquidText about? What are we trying to do with it? Well, the problem that we're trying to solve is that computing is amazing for helping us to find great content, right? You know, everything from standard search engines all the way to very specific industry, particular fields, such as medicine and legal. There's great tools for helping you find content. And of course, computing has helped us compose great content as well. But the question is, how does computing help us to understand, digest, make sense of the content that we found? Well, the problem is that in a lot of ways, it actually hasn't. Like 80% of professionals and students tend to prefer reading on paper versus digital. Well, that's shocking. I mean, that basically means that in one of the most important areas of human thought, of understanding the stuff that we read, computing is in a lot of ways making it worse. So why is this? Well, it turns out that most of the way that we've approached reading in digital is by taking the experience of paper and putting it on a computer. And the problem is that when you try to replicate paper on a computer, you end up inheriting the limitations of paper without really inheriting the things that make it work, without inheriting its benefits. So LiquidText is different. Instead of trying to replicate paper, we started with how the brain works. We started with cognitive science. We started with general understanding of kind of reading theory. And so I actually did my doctoral thesis on this back at Georgia Tech. We spent 4 years researching this, 2 peer-reviewed papers, and a very long doctoral dissertation to approach reading in a different way. And so the result is LiquidText. And our goal here is to try to help you find your information faster, take better, more reusable notes, and to discover connections and insights in what you're reading that you otherwise would have missed. So very quick history. We launched in 2015, originally on iPad, and last year we launched for PC and Mac as well. We've had the luxury of getting some nice accolades from Apple and from the press, including most innovative app of the year when we launched, which we're still very excited about. Law 360 even called us world changing. So we're really excited about those things. But what I'm most excited about is to actually show you the demo. So to demonstrate LiquidText for you, let's take a little story. Let's imagine that you're a lawyer and your client rather, had some arthritis in her hip. So she just had a brand new stem cell treatment done on her hip to relieve her arthritis, but it didn't work. Instead of getting rid of the arthritis, it gave her a couple days of inflammation and then nothing. Then her arthritis was as bad as ever. So the patient says the doctor must have done something wrong, but the doctor says the patient wasn't really a good candidate for the procedure and that he told her that. So now you're here and you need to figure out what's going on. So to demonstrate this, let's go back to the LiquidText app here. So we're using a custom special version of LiquidText where you can see my finger with the little blue dots as I move it around. This is, of course, the LiquidText home screen. Here we have all the different projects listed. In this case, I'm going to open the McCaffrey stem cell case. That's what we're going to be working on. So let me introduce you to the LiquidText screen here, the LiquidText editor screen, rather. So over all the way on the left, we have our document list, right? And so you see here, I have these little folders. I've already imported the different documents that I'm going to need for this project, and I've gathered them into folders like that. Next to the right of that, we have the document pane where it shows the documents we're reading now. And over a little bit further to the right, we have the workspace. The workspace is this place where you can gather all of your notes and annotations, organize them, analyze them, make connections between them. So with that said, let's start. So the first question that we have is, again, the surgeon said that the patient in this case was not a very good candidate for this procedure. So my first question is, who is a good candidate for this procedure? So I'm going to begin by going over to the workspace, tapping and holding for a moment and creating a new text box. And I'll type in it, who is a good candidate for the procedure? Okay. And you know what, maybe we'll make this red as well. So to find out who's a good candidate, I'm going to go over to my documents list on the left, and I'm going to open the regulatory bodies folder. And I see ASCA, American Stem Cell Association, best practices. And I'll scroll down a little bit, and beautiful. They talk about medical prerequisites, and they say most adults are good candidates for the procedure. So I'm going to just take this, that looks pretty important here, and pull this out into the workspace and attach it to the little note that I took before. All right, so look at what I've done to start with here. I've added some of my own information, in this case, just a heading to the workspace. And then I've started gathering information from the sources that are important to me and snapping them together. So that's a big part of what the workspace is about, letting you take all the most important information and bring it together. Now you'll notice on this little note that I pulled out, on this excerpt I pulled out, there's an arrow on the left. What is that arrow for? That arrow lets you get back to the source. So anytime I want, I can just touch this little arrow and it scrolls me right back to the source of this excerpt. Okay, great. But they mention over here that, even though most adults are a good candidate, that there's a figure that talks about a more detailed algorithm for who is and isn't a candidate. I'd like to see that figure, but I'd also like to compare it to this text. Well, the problem is these are on different pages. And comparing things on different pages is really a pain in almost any document. But LiquidText is about helping you see the important things together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these two together. So I'm going to take two fingers and squeeze my document like this. Look at that, like it's made of rubber. And I can actually bring the figure and the text side by side, just like this. So again, I just squeeze the document to do this. And to emphasize, I happen to be doing this demo on my iPad, but you can do the same thing using your mouse and keyboard if you happen to be using a machine that doesn't have a touch screen. So it works great either way. All right, so now I have this diagram with the algorithm. I'd like to capture this. So just as I did with the text, I'm gonna just drag a little selection rectangle around it and pull it out right into my workspace and just connect it like that. Look at that, perfect. Okay, so now you see what I'm doing here. I'm gathering information from different pages, different parts of the documents, organizing them together. But now I want to go on to the next step. So now I know a little bit about what the algorithm is for whether someone is a good candidate for this procedure. But let's find out if our client would have been a good candidate. So for that, I want to go to her patient medical record. So I'll go back to my documents list over on the left here. I'll tap patient medical record and we bring it up. Here we are, Arlene McCaffrey. We'll scroll down a little bit and learn a little bit more about her. Well, the first thing we see is in terms of pre-existing conditions, she has diabetes, hypertension, and of course that arthritis in her left hip. So let's look over the algorithm here. So first of all, it says, is she under 65? Well, yes, she is. Is she immune compromised? Well, no, she's not. History of carcinomas? No. But high blood pressure? Yes, she does have high blood pressure. So she's actually in the closely, I'm not sure if Zoom is showing it clearly, she's in the closely monitored category. So that's actually pretty important. So, it's starting to look like maybe the surgeon had a point, right? She does have high blood pressure. Maybe she wasn't a good candidate for this. So I'm going to make a little text box here and write, patient was in closely monitored category. I'll tag this in red. That's kind of important. All right. So that's definitely significant, but we should still do a little bit more research, see if there's anything else that could be that could shed some more light on what happened here. So I'd like to find out a little bit about what the surgeon did. How did he perform this procedure? So I'm going to scroll my workspace over a little bit, make another text box and say, how the surgeon performed the procedure. All right, excellent. So to find that out, I want to go back to my documents list and go to the depositions folder. And here I have the surgeon's deposition transcript right here. So you notice I've already highlighted the key points of the deposition transcript earlier, the key steps the surgeon took. But I really kind of want to see these steps together so I can understand the flow, how one kind of relates to the next. Now, the problem is, though, these are spread across many different pages. How can I see that flow? How can I see that bigger picture? Well, one of the things that, again, LiquidText really tries to help you with is seeing the important information together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the highlight view button. And when I tap that, now if I pinch my document, look what happens. All of my highlights come together with as much or as little context as I need. And if I want to dig in a little more deeply into one, I just put my fingers around it, squeeze apart, and it gives me all the context squeezed together and all the highlights come together again. And again, one of the best things is this also works just as well if you happen to be using a mouse and keyboard rather than your touch screen. Okay, but in any case, so we see them all here. Let's start taking these out. So first, you notice I've already highlighted these. Well, a really common flow for how people like to use LiquidText is to first highlight the important things in a document, highlight the but vaguely potentially important and interesting things, and then come back and take a second pass and actually start pulling out the ones that are particularly relevant. So in this case, I can do exactly that. If I want to take out this highlight here, I can just double tap it and just drag it out. And notice what it does. LiquidText is smart. It makes the little color code on the highlight on the excerpt be the same as the highlight that it came from. So I can take this guy out and just attach it. In this case, I'll actually leave them unattached. Okay, now I go on to the second one and I say, I have a bunch I have to pull out here. Maybe I want to automate this a little bit, and I can. I could just tap auto excerpt. And what the app does is it pulls out the excerpt automatically, puts it in the next available sort of piece of empty space. And then I can just keep doing that. And it just keeps pulling them out. Okay. Great feature. And actually, one of the nice things, if you happen to be doing this on your iPad, if you happen to have an Apple Pencil, if you double tap it, you have a whole bunch of different options here for what happens, but maybe the most fun is the auto excerpt. And what that means is if I were to, let's say, select this, and then I double tap my finger against the barrel of my Apple Pencil, we use that. It auto excerpts it just like that. Okay, so back to our story. So we pulled out these points, but I see something really interesting here. The points are actually not listed in chronological order because at one point they say, the questioner says, did you do anything before that? Which means that these 2 points actually come before inserting the joint spacer. So let's rearrange this. All right, we'll put this here, put the synovial fluid here. All right, very nice. So this is another great thing about LiquidText, right? Sometimes in the documents that you're reading, the material is arranged and organized in the way that made sense for the author, but that may actually not be what makes sense for you. And using the workspace, you can rearrange it into the form that does make sense for you. Okay, so now we'll pull out the rest of these points. So the surgeon applied the ICM matrix gel. Let the matrix gel set for 15 minutes. That seems pretty important. The surgeon shaved off a small bone spur off the patient, applied the stem cell culture, and finally closed the patient up. Well, looking at it on the surface, it all seems very reasonable. It seems like the surgeon performed the procedure correctly. But, I'd like to learn a little bit more. Maybe the surgeon missed something. So what I want to do is I want to find out what exactly is the official approved procedure, the exact steps for how you're supposed to perform this. So I'm going to go back to my document list here, and I'm going to go to Galaxidrin product info. And here we have the product manual for the Galaxidrin system. And we scroll down here, and here we have all the steps. All right, well, let's look at these and see if they match. Okay, well, let's see. You had to do some blood tests to begin with, check the bone fascia, prepare the cartilage, prepare the joint, apply the ICM matrix gel, okay, leave it undisturbed for 15 minutes, okay, that seems important. Remove the excess ICM matrix gel, prepare the stem cell culture, apply the culture, and then close the patient up. Well, on the surface of it, again, it seems like the surgeon performed this exactly right to the letter. So, man, what could be going on here? Why did the procedure fail so badly? Well, to try to find out a little bit more information, I'd like to check the phase 3 clinical trials from when Galaxidrin was approved. So let me look over here, and you see we have the phase 3 clinical trials right here. But I'd like to actually show you something. This is a very simple project, so we only have a few documents here. But in a real project, you could have hundreds of these. So one thing that we're adding, you don't actually have it in your LiquidText yet, but you should be getting it in just a couple of weeks, is the ability to filter documents here. So I can tap filter, and I can tap, for example, trials, and it filters it down and shows me just the documents that either have in their title or their tags the word trials. So now I can tap this and go right to our phase 3 clinical trials. Okay, lovely. So now we have a lot of information here, but what I'm looking for particularly is any information about inflammation, where the patient had inflammation instead of actually getting any benefit from the procedure. Well, how can we find that? Well, we can do a search, right? And it turns out people like to do a lot of searches in LiquidText, so we tried to make this as easy and low friction as possible. So you don't even have to tap the search button if you don't want to. You can just start typing. So INFLA, inflammation. And look what happens. As I start typing, LiquidText brings up the type to navigate box. And here it lists all of my different options, including search document for inflammation. Well, that's great. I can just press enter and it finds them. Now, in this case, the results are scattered over many pages, and you can see the little red lines in the scroll bar showing where the different results are located. But I'd really like to see them together. So just as I did with Highlight View, I can take 2 fingers and pinch the document and bring all the results together, just like this. This is actually a really amazing feature because it's kind of like you can pivot a document on a word or a phrase. So I can squeeze all the results together, then put my fingers around one of them to squeeze apart to get more context. Squeeze together to bring all the results together again. Okay, so in this case, I think we found the result that's really interesting for us. There actually was one case during the clinical trials where one patient ended up getting had a failure of the treatment and just had some inflammation. But in that case, the administering surgeon only applied the ICM matrix gel for 2 minutes instead of 15. Well, in our case, the surgeon says that he applied it for 15 minutes, but maybe there's some connection here. I should at least keep track of this. So I'm going to take this and pull this out into my workspace. Now I'll color this red. And by the way, you'll notice when I change the color of an excerpt, it changes the color of the little highlight that represents its source. So we try to keep nice color consistency there. Okay, so now I've pulled this out. But again, I don't know if this really helps because the surgeon said that he left the ICM matrix gel on for 15 minutes. Well, what could have happened? Maybe the surgeon made a mistake. Let me try to find out a little bit more. I'd like to go back to depositions and take a look at the lead nurse's deposition transcript, see if there's anything in there that sheds more light on what happened here. So just as we did with the surgeon, I'll tap highlight view, squeeze, and bring all of the highlights together. And now I can start scrolling around, really easily see everything together. And let's see what we find. Well, first of all, the nurse agrees exactly with the doctor, says 15 minutes, just like the doctor said. Well, this seems to be really consistent here. So I'm really not sure what else I can say. But maybe there's some mistake. Let me just see if there's any inconsistencies between what the nurse said and what the doctor said. So I'm going to take the surgeon's deposition transcript and bring it up side by side, or in this case, top and bottom, next to the nurse's deposition transcript. And now look at that. I can actually see them together. And if I wanted, I could actually arrange these side by side as well. So we have multiple document layout. I can select horizontal, or I can select vertical. But in this case, the vertical is going to be a little bit easier for me. All right, so as we look through this, it seems like in general, everything seems to be really matching up very properly, very nicely. I don't really see any problems. But I do see something that's kind of interesting. I see that the nurse mentions that after 10 minutes, they shaved the bone spur off the patient. Well, the surgeon mentions that as well. But the nurse mentions something else too. The nurse mentions that after they shaved the bone spur off, they flushed out the joint with saline. Well, that's interesting. What if flushing out the joint with saline after only 10 minutes washed away the ICM matrix gel before its full 15 minutes that it needs to cure? That could be really important if that's true. Well, we need to find out more. So first, I want to keep track of this. So I'm going to again take it, pull it out, connect it to that other node over here. Second, because this is such an important connection between the nurse's deposition transcript and the surgeon's, I want to capture that connection. But how can I? These are two completely different documents. Well, one of the most powerful things in LiquidText is that not only do we let you discover connections, we give you some really unique tools to capture them. So I can just draw in InkLink a line from one document right into the other. And look what happens. LiquidText has created an InkLink crisscrossing between my different documents, a live connection just by drawing a line. So now later on, if I close the surgeon's deposition transcript, I can always just tap this little button in the nurse's and it brings me right back to the surgeon's. And likewise, it goes the other way too. If I've closed the nurse's deposition transcript, I can just tap this link in the surgeon's and it brings me right back to the nurse's. It really creates an amazing bi-directional link. So you can start now kind of creating your own little private mini internet, connecting all the different pieces of information that are important to you across your documents and across your notes, as I'll show you a little bit more later. Okay, so this is great. This may actually have shed a little bit more light on the situation, but we still do have the question: could spraying a little bit of saline into the joint wash away the ICM matrix gel? I mean, we have no idea. So to start with, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go back to the Galaxtrin product info and go back to that product manual, see if there's anything that suggests this could be an issue. Well, it does say, leave the Galaxtrin ICM matrix gel undisturbed for 15 minutes, 15 solid minutes. So let's pull this out. It does, help us here. But the question is, does spraying a little bit of saline count as disturbing it? I mean, is ICM matrix gel even water soluble? Well, I'd like to find out, but how would I find out? You know what? I see we have the material safety data sheet for Galaxtrin. So maybe we can just scroll down, particularly for the ICM matrix gel. So let's scroll down a little bit. Is there anything that gives us any clue here? And, I'm not sure there is, but I found something. Solubility in water, very high. Well, that pretty much explodes the whole thing open, doesn't it? Now we know almost certainly what happened. If the solubility in water is high, then spraying saline in the joint probably would wash away the ICM matrix gel. So we need to keep track of this. We need to capture this idea here. So I'm going to make a little text box, zoom in a little bit, and write conclusion. Surgeon accidentally washed away the matrix gel after 10 minutes before it had cured. And we'll just make that red as well. So I think that's it. I think now we know what's going on. So since this little note here is connected to these excerpts over on the left and the right, I want to show that connection. So I'm going to draw ink links between these guys. And look what happens. It connects these as well with live ink links, just as I was able to draw between my different documents. And again, this is a very small project, but in a larger one, if, for example, these lines were long, I could just tap the end of one and it takes me right to the thing that's on the other end of this ink link. So I can start making a mind map in my workspace, start connecting everything together in the way that makes sense. But likewise, I might want to go a step further than that. Maybe I want to connect more than just different items in my workspace. And maybe I want to connect more than just different documents. One of the greatest things you can do with ink links is actually connecting from your documents into your workspace. And so now I've created this live link between my document and my workspace. And so later on, I can always just tap this link and go right back to the source. So again, it's like you can create almost your own little mini internet, connecting all the different materials that you need for a project. Okay, well, this is great. So now I have all this material here, but I need to share this, right? First, I may want to share this with some of the other attorneys involved. I may want to share this with the judge. If they happen to have LiquidText, then I'm set, right? I can just click send. I can just go send LiquidText file. And next year, we're even going to be enabling sharing where you can just send a link. But what if they don't have LiquidText? Or what if they want something in a more traditional linear document-oriented form? Well, in that case, I can tap Notes Outline. And look what LiquidText does. It takes all of my highlights and all of my notes and it organizes them into a nice linear document with pictures and everything that I can send right off to the judge or to my colleagues. Likewise, I can go to export, send this to Microsoft Word or Google Docs and start editing it, polish it into whatever form I need it in. Likewise, if we have someone who wants this in PDF, we can actually do a PDF export where we export the entire workspace along with your documents as a single PDF that they can open and even click some of the links and be able to get to the sources. So we've tried to make it really easy for LiquidText to be nicely compatible with folks that don't actually have LiquidText yet. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the bulk of the demo, but I do want to show you one thing that's kind of cool. Again, this was a really simple project. So we only had, maybe a couple dozen excerpts, but in a real project, you could have hundreds or even thousands of excerpts. So one of the things that we've added recently is tagging. And so what you might do, for example, is let's say we click a couple of these excerpts here and I go to tags and I might say review, and maybe I pick red as the color and I'll say mistake, because maybe I think in these two cases, the physician made a mistake. So notice what's happened. It's added a little mistake tag to these excerpts. Now, on the other hand, maybe I think in these cases, everything was done correctly. So I'll say review, and instead I'll say correct. And for the color, I'll pick a little bit more of an intense green color. Tap add, and it adds them. And so now what I can do is I can do a search. So I can do a search here, search the workspace, go to tags, and maybe I want to find all the mistakes. Tap on mistake and press return. And notice what it does. It identifies all the excerpts that have that tag. And I can, of course, click next and previous to jump back and forth between them. I can zoom out to see the bigger picture of where they are. And of course, this works for the document as well. So if I select some text in the document, I can tap tags and see my tags. But if I want to go a little faster than that, I can just select the text and start typing. So I can type, let's say, MIS for mistake. And notice one of the things LiquidText sees I might want to do is apply tag, review mistake. I can just select that and it does that for me and applies the review mistake tag. Effortless. Okay, so this is the end of the core demo, but I do want to show you one other thing before we go to Q&A. One of the things that we've added recently that we're especially excited about is LiquidText's real-time syncing and backup. Now, I can't really do a live demo of that because it involves multiple machines, but let me just show a really quick 1-minute demo video of it that'll just walk you guys through here. So here's a case where we have a user using a desktop and a tablet at the same time. And what the idea is you can use these together and use each device in the way that makes the most sense. So in this case, the user just pulled out a free-form excerpt on her tablet, and you see almost instantly these appear on her desktop as well. And so you can use the desktop for things that make sense for a desktop, like organization, seeing things side by side. And in this case, organizing a large group of excerpts. Now she can go over to her tablet and use that for what it's great for, freehand inking. And you see, as she does her inking on the desktop, within about just a second, that ink appears there as well. And so likewise, of course, one of the great things for desktop is comparison. And so in this case, she can open up a couple of documents on the desktop and compare them side by side. And if she creates an ink link, for example, on the desktop, you see it appears on the iPad as well, and she can just tap it to follow it. So the idea again is you can use each device in the way that makes the most sense for each part of your workflow. Okay, so with that, let's take any questions.
Hello, this is Stephen again. So first thing I'll comment is there were a few questions about the recording of this presentation. And yes, it will be available later this afternoon. Watch your emails, and you will be receiving both a link to the recording and an invitation to join our LiquidText community forum, which we encourage you to participate in as a source for best practices. You will have a file repository of this and other webinars that have been conducted, and generally it's our place where we're fostering information interchange between our user communities. So that said, let's jump into the questions. So the first is a double question from Jesus Cano, really about workflow, and I'll jump in. So workspace are great for gathering information from different sources, but what is the best place for to put user-generated content? For example, having a textbook in a document, where do I write my answers to the exercises in the textbook? And then continuing with other similar apps, I can usually insert blank pages after the exercise questions and start writing the answers there with my pencil. The answers for each exercises can fill 1 to 2, 4 pages. So inserting pages looks like a reasonable workflow for me. So that's our first question.
Great question. Thank you, Jesus, for that. So I would say it depends a little on how much space you need. And I think your point about wanting a couple pages is a great one. For that, I would actually suggest use the workspace for the place where you're going to write your answers, right? So LiquidText does not right now have the ability to insert more pages into a document. It's something that we've thought about. And if folks are interested in that, I would definitely encourage you to go visit our forums later. And there's a section for feature requests. We frequent that a lot, and we take those really seriously. So I'd love to hear more about the features that you guys are requesting. So definitely let us know. Let's see what other people think of it as well. But for right now, let's see. Let's go back here. Open up a fresh project. We'll go to this one. Okay. So for right now, the way I would probably approach that, if it's a moderate amount of space that you need, I would say dedicate one of the workspace pages to it. So, I would write here, problem 1, and just start writing the things that you need. And for connecting them, this is the beauty of ink links, right? You can literally just create an ink link that connects them. And then as you go on to the next problem, one of the things you might want to do is configure the workspace so you have a clearer notion of actual pages, right? So we might set 8.5 by 11 here. And now we can see really clearly all of our different workspace pages. And so I might put problem 1 here, go on and put problem 2 here, and then maybe likewise draw an ink link connecting them. And so this way, as you go between the different parts of your workspace, you can always get right to the source of the problem that it connects to. And when you're on a seeing given problem, you can always just tap the little link to get right to the solution to that problem. There's a few other ways you could do it too, but if you need a lot of space, this is the way I would probably recommend.
Okay. Sanyun asks about the export function. I was wondering, is there a limitation on the number of highlights you can export? I recently tried to export my highlights and notes, but realized that in the Word file, a lot of the highlights I made were missing.
Oh, well, that should not happen. No, there is no limit. If you're seeing anything like that, one thing I would warn is if your highlights originally were not made in LiquidText, the PDF file format is very, very messy. And there are some apps, usually LiquidText can import highlights without a problem from other PDF readers. But in some cases, they encode their highlights in strange ways that we can't import. So if you're seeing any problems with some of the highlights not coming through, it might be because the app that it originally came from doesn't do highlights in a way that's compatible with us. If you did make those highlights all in LiquidText and they just aren't appearing in your Word document, I would say definitely reach out to our customer support. It's possible that if there's a bug, and we'd love to file a bug report against that.
Okay, Jesus comments, thanks for adding OCR recently. It's a nice feature to search words over scanned documents. What about implementing OCR to search text generated by user using ink?
Handwriting recognition, yes. Thank you for that. It's something we've considered. It's something a few people have asked for. We haven't really seen a ton of demand for it yet. And it's, it tends to be a fairly expensive feature to add because, generally we probably need to go out and license a handwriting recognition engine. So it's the kind of thing we'd want to see, strong user demand for it. But if we see it, we've already had some conversations with suppliers about it. So it's an option. I would say if this is something folks are interested in, please go to the forums, tell us it's important to you, and it's certainly something that we can add.
Tanya asks, I started LiquidText this week. How can I clear my text of all tabs and start over? Or what do you recommend for restarting? And can I clean up tags as well?
You want to clear your text of all tags. I apologize. I'm not sure I understand exactly the question, but if you want to start over with a given document, your easiest way is just, if you want to really fully start over with a given document or project, just delete the project and re-import the document from scratch, and you'll be thoroughly started over.
Okay, Diego asks, any chance of creating operational links with citation managers such as Mendeley?
Diego, thank you for that question. Yeah, that's a very good one. We're in the process of launching reference manager integrations with Zotero and Mendeley. Some others maybe as well down the line, but Zotero and Mendeley are going to be the first two. We're hoping to get our Zotero integration out in probably the next, in under 2 weeks. Mendeley, maybe about another week or so after that. Right now, the way the integration is going to work is it's going to be possible for you to, so right now when you want to import documents, you go to add documents, you have a few options. You're going to have another one here, reference manager. And you can click, reference manager, you click Zotero or Mendeley, you select the documents that you want, pulls them right into LiquidText along with their metadata. And then after you've, maybe annotated the documents, when you close the project, it'll send those annotations right back to Zotero or Mendeley. Now you're talking about something a little different. I think you're talking about an operational link between LiquidText and the reference manager. So that one's not on our spec for this right now. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the workflow that you're describing and how you'd like that operational link to work. So please let us know in the forums or in any other way, even here, what it is, what your workflow looks like, because maybe it's something that we can either add now or add in the future.
Dawn says, hi from Paris. Does the system save automatically what you create?
Yes. So thank you, Dawn. Yes, as soon as every 3 minutes or so. So let me describe a little bit about how saving works. So every 3 minutes or so, LiquidText saves locally on your device. If you're using our syncing and backup service, then when it does that, it also sends an incremental save around the same time over to our web servers.
Okay, Dawn also asks, do I have to upload my research docs to the app, or can I just access them on my PC?
So you need, I guess it depends on how you want to look at it, right? As long as those files are on your PC, you can easily get them from within LiquidText, right? You go to add document. I'm using the iPad version, but the PC version works the same way. Go to document file and just pick the documents that you want. And then what it will do is LiquidText will take them, make a copy of them and import them into LiquidText, send them to the LiquidText web service. So it'll sync them on your different devices if you've activated that, and so on. So if that's what you're asking, yes, you will need to import them into LiquidText for them to be able to sync across your devices and be able to use them and everything. But you can always add more, you can always import another document into a given LiquidText project whenever you want. So you don't need to do that all at the beginning or anything like that.
Jen asks, how can I easily take notes during a lecture as a student?
That's a good question. So, the sort of quick answer or maybe shallow, my shallow simplistic answer is, well, you can just go in the workspace and take your notes. But my guess is what you're probably really saying is, what if you want to take notes when there's no document involved, right? Because you see all the demos that I've done for you are very much where there's a document. And if your notes in class are, let's say, based on a PowerPoint that the professor sent out, well, then you're good to go, right? Pull in, import the PowerPoint, take your notes, create ink links between the notes and the PowerPoint, or even just write directly over the PowerPoint. LiquidText is absolutely perfect for that. If on the other hand, you're saying there's no PowerPoint, there's nothing, like I just go into class and the professor starts talking and I need to take notes. It's true. LiquidText, we want to make it a little bit smoother for that use case, for that kind of workflow. Like right now, it's really, really optimized for the idea of taking notes with documents. If there's no document involved, it's not as smooth for that. So that's actually one of the things that we're planning on working on in the coming months, to make it where you can just start a brand new project and just take notes, even if there's no documents involved. So we're going to be making that experience a lot smoother soon. For the moment right now, if there's no document involved, obviously you can do something like just import a random blank document and take notes in your workspace. And of course, you can always just shrink the document section down if you want to focus on the workspace right now. So I'd say for right now, if I understand your question right, that's your best bet. But again, we're going to be doing some nice things to make this smoother in the short term.
Okay, Joseph asks, the order of documents imported into a project is not kept in the final exported PDF document, i.e. D1, D2, D3 added in this order when exporting the final work as PDF after annotating the order is not the same anymore. Is there any solution to that, i.e. for keeping the original order of documents?
That's a really great question. And the answer is no. I don't think I've seen that request before. That makes complete sense, especially for folks with large volumes of documents. I would say please contact our customer support or post this on the forums. This would not be a hard thing for us to add. We'll take a look at it, and if we can do it quickly, we can maybe include this in a coming update in the coming couple of weeks. That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that.
Matt asks, can you export a PDF based on tags, i.e. export all the excerpts tagged, organized by tag?
Great question, Matt. Right now, no, but we're thinking about some ways that you could do that. So I'd really love to hear more about your workflow. So I'll tell you some of the things we're interested in doing. So in the coming, probably shortly after New Year's, one of the big projects that we have on our task list is adding some major improvements to the workspace, some more organizational tools. And one of the things that we're really excited about is some automatic ways to organize your excerpts. So what you'd probably want to do, if I'm understanding you correctly, is you'd probably want to say, I want to organize my excerpts by, by tag. And we have some plans to add that in. And then you'd want to say, now select all the excerpts of tag, important. And I want to export just the selected items. So being able to control exactly what you're exporting is something we've thought about. We haven't gotten as much demand for that. So I would say, please tell us more about your use case. And maybe we can include that. Maybe we can include that more selective export when we redo the workspace. But it's a great suggestion. Yeah, please tell us more.
Okay, an anonymous attendee notes that on the iPad, you can typically tap the top of a screen and the document scrolls up quickly. Have I just not found this function so far, or is it not implemented in LiquidText?
It's not implemented in LiquidText, and there's a whole story behind that. In our early betas, when we were first launching the product, we had it. And then some people were annoyed at us because the way they'd like to hold the screen and using some of the buttons on the top bar, they would click that function by accident. They would activate that by accident, and they'd get really mad at us because you have a 1,000-page document, you're on page 745, and then oops, I jumped to the top of the screen, and now I've lost my place and I forgot what I was doing, and they got really annoyed. And so we turned it off. And then a few people were annoyed, but in general, more people were annoyed when we did have it than when we didn't have it. But a good way to get to the top really quickly is just to type 1. And then you notice as soon as I type that, the type to navigate sees that it's a number. So its first suggestion is go to page 1 and then just press return.
Okay, Jorg asks, changing colors for pen and marker is quite cumbersome, i.e. click multiple times. Would be good to have a favorite selections as a top menu choice.
Yeah, you mean like, he probably means right up here on the top bar. So like you click pen and then it gives you a few different color options next to the pen. Yeah, we've had a few people ask for that recently. I'd say we're taking that seriously. We're thinking about that. We don't have a concrete plan to add that yet, but I would say please suggest that on the forums. We can get that into our feature recommendation list, upvote it, see how other folks are responding to it. And if the response is strong, we can certainly add that. That's, it takes a little bit of engineering work to do that smoothly, but it's not rocket science. So, yeah, we'd love to hear how folks are responding to that.
Tanya asks, are the full references included with each tags? Put another way, would the complete reference come up with the citation?
Would the complete reference come up with the citation? I'm not sure I understand exactly, but if we go, for example, let's go to a different project here because this one's boring. Let's go back to this one. So if we go here and we go to notes outline, you'll see that at the bottom of each element, of each highlight, for example, it does actually list the reference and the page. So if that's what you mean, then yes.
Okay. Can you search for multiple words across all documents?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't really have support for that right now. Right now, it's really a phrase search. But we've thought about expanding that. We'd love to hear if that's something you're interested in, please mention it on the forums under the feature request. We'll see how folks react to it. It's certainly something we could add.
Next question, the latest iPad OS, there's a 3-dot at the top middle of the screen for split page, sidecar, etc. Now, every time I try to select tools and stuff, many times it would be tapping those 3 dots instead. Can you find some way to change that?
Yeah, so first of all, my apologies for that. The Apple's design and our design are a little bit incompatible there. So the reason we've kind of put that off is you'll notice I'm using my Apple Pencil right now, and I'm jumping between the different buttons up here, and everything is fine, right? It doesn't make any confusion. It knows exactly what I'm trying to do. Where the problem comes in is when I use my fingers to change these. Then you see we have that little Apple multitasking button. So, our thinking was that most of the time when people are selecting those buttons, they're going to do it with their Apple Pencil. And so most of the time, there isn't going to really be any problem or frustration with accidentally activating the multitasking button. Because if you want multitasking, use your finger. If you want to switch between the highlighter and text select, you'll use the pencil. So if, we've had a couple people tell us that that's not their workflow and that they're, finding themselves frustrated with this. It's unfortunately that there's no like really great solution. So I would say, please just contact us. You can use the forum, but for this, feel free to write to us as well. And just let us know that this is something frustrating for you. And, we'll see how people respond to it in the coming, couple weeks. And if we see a lot of folks are getting frustrated with it, then we will either offer an option to disable the Apple multitasking button, which I'd prefer not to do, but it is something that Apple enables us to do, or make a little bit more space between our buttons there, or something along those lines. So we'll have to, we'll see how folks respond to it, but that's kind of been our thinking so far. So again, please contact us if you are being frustrated by that, and we can see what we can do.
RC asks, would you include a customizable color, open paren, hex, close paren, selection soon?
A customizable color selection. No, we generally actually have a relatively, well, it's a little different between iOS and Windows for different reasons, but you notice on iOS, we have a little bit of a constrained color palette here. And that's actually really intentional. Like you can click here and get some more colors. But this is actually really intentional, because if we give people, totally arbitrary color selections, they're going to tend to, get annoyed, because usually people want to reuse the same colors over and over because they tend to associate it with a certain meaning. So hex is, so specifying colors by hex is not something we thought about. If this is something that's important to you, please tell us about your workflow and why you want to do it. And, and we'll go from there.
Joseph asks, is there a possibility to add bookmarks to a certain document?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, we do not have a bookmark mechanism. We recommend you just use the workspace for bookmarks. Right? Pull out your excerpts, those form bookmarks, or even use ink links. We've had a few folks recently say that they would like a really explicit, like, as in go to the outline and, start adding bookmarks there kind of feature. I would say, please contact us. Tell us a little bit about, what you do, what your workflow is. And it's something that we'll think about. It's not on our roadmap right now, but, if we see strong demand for it, that could certainly change.
Andrew asks, are there plans to allow searches using synonyms, wildcards, and the like?
There's no specific plans for that now, but again, it wouldn't be super hard. Like in this Q&A, right? You're the second person asking for more power in the search. I would say, please just tell us more of what you're looking for, and tell us the kind of workflow and use case you have. And if we get strong demand for it, we can absolutely add it. Most of the internal mechanisms that we have should be able to support that. So it's a bit of coding, but it shouldn't be too crazy. So it really comes down to the time and folks demanding it. So please tell us more.
And again, we would mention to folks that our community forum has sections for suggestions and discussions of new features for LiquidText. And if you hadn't gotten the idea, we do pay very close attention to it. So it's your direct channel to us to ask for new features or enhancements. So
yeah, and let me just add, before you finish, let me just add one thing to that. So the forum is great for feature requests, discussions of workflow, and things like that. It's not good for customer support, like for I found a bug and things, because our customer support folks simply don't frequent our forums, right? So if you're like, oh, the app is crashing or something, that's not going to be a good place to get support. For that, please contact support@liquidtext.net or use the little question mark button inside the app, and you'll be connected directly with someone who can help you. The forums, by contrast, are where our design team, our executive team, that's where we hang out. And so that's a good place to, kind of discuss the new features and all those things.
Okay, and our last question, as we're just about out of time, is a discussion about where highlights and modifications are saved. The initial question was, are highlights and annotations saved with the original PDF or in a local copy? The answer was in a local copy. The follow-up question was, thanks. Would it be possible to change that so that the highlights are saved to the original docs? So I'll let you answer the broader question of where the point of truth lies within any document or project.
Great question. So for a lot of reasons, the source of truth is the version of the document in LiquidText. However, we know that a lot of folks want the on-document annotations to be sent back to their source, to the original source document as well, right? So you might say, for example, like, okay, the workspace lives in LiquidText, that's cool, but like I want this highlight here and these little bits of ink here to go back to my original source document in, let's say, Dropbox. Well, the good news is we've had that for a while. So if you import a document from, let's say, Dropbox, when you close your LiquidText project, it will ask you, would you like us to send these document annotations back to your original source document in Dropbox? And if you say yes, it will do exactly that.
Okay, with
So
that,
that's it.
this will bring our session today to a close. And again, I'd like to thank you all for participating. Please join the forum and help interact with your colleagues and us in terms of making LiquidText better and facilitating your use. And we'll see you the next time. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are. Thanks much. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.